Alright, welcome everyone to a new Dominions 5 video, and this is an announcement video for the next game that I'm going to be in. General Confusion has come back to Dominions 5 and has announced his next game on his channel, and it's going to be a Disciples game with 3-player teams. For those of you that aren't aware, Disciples is a unique form of Dominions where you essentially team up with one player taking the role of the Pretender God and the others basically being glorified prophets. It's a great format. It's incredibly strategic, and in this version of the Disciples game, what we did was we had a snake draft, wherein whoever got the first pick of one cycle to pick the first nation was the last to pick the second nation, and so on. So it was an interesting sort of counter-move, nation-picking experience with a lot of really good names involved in the game. And I thought what I'd do is take you through the map that we're going to be playing on. This is not the actual game, by the way. This is the map loaded up with all the correct nations, but they're not in their correct spawn points or anything like that. Nations move around quite a lot on this randomly generated map, but it will let us go through the teams and what we expect to be facing. And I'll also talk about our philosophy and some of our plans, and then expect not to see actual gameplay for, a couple of weeks as the turns roll forward. But what I do plan on doing is picking nations in this game who I've never worked with or engaged with, and who don't have nation analyses online, and I want to do some basic nation analysis for them. That's because I'm not generally an early age player, and this is an early era game. I've played exactly one game in the early era compared to all of my others in the middle and late, with late age being my most commonly chosen area. So early age is a little bit different for me. I won't talk about what makes EA different too much in this video, because we've got a lot to talk about in terms of the game itself. So, this is a 6-team game, so 18 players with an average province allocation of about 14 provinces per person. And here is the list of nations that are in the game. And I thought I'd walk through the teams that we have, talk a little about each one, who's playing them, etc. Ignore the randomly generated pretenders. We can load up the actual game once I start posting videos and have a look at actual pretender names. For the moment, Team 1 is Ice Ice Baby. So this is a team of Rus, Niflheim, and Pangea, with General Confusion playing Rus, Nasagen playing Niflheim, and 6P playing Pangea. So that trio is formed, I think, on this map. Where are these guys? On this map, they've just spawned 1, 2, 3. So in a Disciples game, where possible, the game tends to put you together so you can sort of guard your back. What do I have to say about this team? I kind of like this team. Let's think about what they've got available to them, and how I might rate them, what I might expect. I don't know anything about the pretenders or whatnot yet, so this is all just me theory crafting and guessing. So I think this is a reasonable team. They're obviously going to go cold 3, you'd be unified by that. So Rus and Niflheim will want cold, and Pangea is okay to operate in cold, I suppose. But they don't have a cold preference, so they won't get full benefit on those scales. What they can do then, and I'll just check if they've done this later, is they can make Pangea the god, and then get points for dumping the cold scales on Pangea, because it's not their climate preference, while actually helping out Rus and Niflheim. They've got quite wide magic access, if you look at them. One of the things I look at when I'm looking at a Disciples game team, I don't want that, I want Pretenders of the World, is what variety of tools they have available to them. So they've got a mixture of a little bit of late game blood, which is handy. Having Scrydy to take you blood gives you a late game plan inherently. So they have blood, they have water, they have death, they have a variety of astral nature, and they've got a lot of air magic in Rus. And then Pangea is kings of nature magic, like nature 4s with chance of randoming N5. A little bit of earth, a little bit of blood, and then more nature in the form of the Dryads. So we've got air, we've got nature, a little bit of earth, a little bit of death, a little bit of water, and a dash of blood. Nice, reasonable access. So far as armies go, they've got an interesting selection. So Niflheim brings to the table not particularly good troops, but they bring the scary Nifl Giants, which are scary with particular blesses, especially early on, and their cold auras and their cold protection. But also this is a great thug nation, right? So they'll have Scrati to thug. They'll have Neefel Jarls, which are a step above Scrati in terms of cost and rareness and whatever, but can be really tough. Heavy thugs into micro super combatants. This is one of the recruitable super combatant chassis in the game. But they've combined that with Rus, which doesn't get a recruitable super combatant, but does get a decent, sacred, very hard-hitting, shape-shifting troop, which they can use to expand in the early days. And then later on, they're just going to have a sort of a communion mage setup. Whereas Pangea would normally expand with blessed white centaurs, who are very killy, very dangerous. Just white centaurs are just good. They're very good. They're one of the things that makes Pangea very strong. And then late game nature magic and the ability to do some cool thugging things as well. So what we're getting there is a variety of assets. They can also make use of different terrains quite effectively, because Pangea gets the ability to generate forces in forests, has cheap temples and labs in forests, so they can transfer all of their forests over to Pangea, and Pangea can make very effective use of those forests, whereas the other nations might want the other territory in their lands. They don't really need production, so the other thing you look for is can they share scales and can you get efficiency? So being able to get the points for dumping cold on Pangea as a god, if they've done that, really handy. They kind of don't need production because none of their sacreds or mages are particularly resource intensive unless the Neefels are pumping out lots of Neefel giants early on. And even then you don't need a lot of prod, so they can probably do without prod. 50-50 on whether the turmoil benefits them. Look, I think they'll expand well. It'll be interesting choosing a bless that works for skin shifters, white centaurs, and Neefel giants. The obvious one is you take Pangea. Pangea is the god, and you take regen, and that takes care of. That looks after the Chud skin shifters when they're in bear form. The white centaurs, it's not as great for, but if they get little chip damage, they'll regen up. But for the Neefel giants and Jarls and all the super combatants and thugs that they'll generate, really good. This is a B minus to A. This is a B plus to A minus sort of team as far as I'm concerned. They've got late game options, they've got early game options, they've got synergies, they've got some scales, and by dumping some scales, they can get some bless, and bless is necessary in case someone rushes them down. So there we go. Moving over to this team here. Where's their third team member? We have... Geez, where is their third team member spawned in this version? Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe I've gotten that wrong in this game. Maybe I didn't put the teams correctly together in this one. But anyway, the actual team is... we have Femoria being played by Triff. We have Yomi being played by Foxius. And we have Lunka being played by Brong. Apologies if I mess up anyone's names here. So, again, knowing nothing about their selection here, I've christened this team Repel. Repel bullshit. So we've got Lunka, Yomi, and Femoria. And again, I should check who the god is, but I'm going to bet it is not Yomi free spawning as the god. In fact, one moment, I'll just check that and note on all the teams who the god. Alright, sorry, we're back. Okay, so I've just confirmed. Pangea is indeed the god for the Ice Baby team, so they did get the points for going cold 3. So good on them. And then for Team Repel, they have gone Yomi, so they want the Yomi free spawn. I'm not sure if that spreads the Yomi reduced income effect over other nations, or whether that's national and they can just get free spawn this way. So interesting. Not sure about that one and how that's implemented, but there we are. Yomi is the god on this one. So we've got Femoria, Yomi, and Lunka. What does this team bring to the table? Well, the obvious point is that all of them bring sacred super combatants, summon, or recruitables to the table in some regard. So what Femoria can do is Femoria has these Femoria giants. They have the Fomorian kings. What they can do is they can slap, if you slap enough bless on them, they have a spear, which is obviously longer because they are large size, with enough that can possibly repel. Yomi gets the Dai Oni, which again is a heavy chassis capable of doing this job, and is fully capable of repelling and being a real bastard about it, while bringing a lot of extra bonuses and benefits to the table. And finally, if you look at Lanka, their sacreds themselves can do a little bit of repelling, depending on which one you pick. I mean, you could use Asaras with spears, I guess, to do the repelling, because they're low resources, but most people would usually prefer to use the higher protection Palankashas that can't repel as much, but they can repel a little bit. But later on, Lanka can summon quite dangerous thugs and super combatants, which would also benefit from that. So I suspect a repel bless, but it's not certain. The other thing is, this is a team which brings a decent sort of magic split. So you've got fire, death, earth. For Moria, it brings air and death, the wind of death sort of cross path in, and also the great Numidian sorceresses that bring even more air. Air is obviously a great path as far as I'm concerned. And then Lanka. So Lanka bringing air, death, blood. So is it super diverse? No, but they're good paths to have. They've got a little bit of what they need. The Rakshasi is a nice rainbow searcher if you get a few of them, at least at low levels. They've got blood as a late game option, so having Lanka gives them blood hunting later on. The temperature scales will be interesting. I reckon they've probably gone... So Lanka is a heat preference. Let's see. What's Yomi? Is Yomi a heat preference? They've probably picked up points for going heat on their Yomi god. And also Yomi gets additional free spawn of certain types in heat, which is interesting. So this will be a turmoil, possibly low production, but maybe higher production. This will be a turmoil, heat, like attack skill, bless, expand really well, and move. And this makes this team relevant to us for reasons that I'll discuss later, although we have a plan. I think it's a decent setup. And again, the players there are Triff, Foxius, and Brong. Team 3. I'm just going on the numbering that's used when people were selecting the teams. Team 3 are the clear favourites. These are the elves, and they have talented players and solid picks. So the picks for Team Elves, that aren't all elves, are Vanheim, being played by Basilius Basil as the god, Tina Nog, played by Fengvir as a disciple, and Arcocephali, being played by Hedalas as a disciple. So why is this really cool? So this team has lots of things. It has, thanks to Tina Nog, it has recruitable mage assassins. Awesome. Banshees. Super dangerous, super annoying, really going to drive you a little bit mad. By bringing Vanheim to the table, you get the classic, super killy, blessable, stealthy, berserky, high kill, high prot. Vanhees are awesome. Sacred, you get the mounted heraldmen, who are the relatively affordable, glamoured pony boys, and you get your recruitable, efficient thugs, the Van Herses and the Vanyals, with the Vanyal being easy to use, but the Van Herse being the more cost-effective option. But you get a little bit of magic and forging through the Dwarven Smiths, and then the Vanadroth gives you a tiny bit of blood, and also sailing. So sailing mobility, which is an important thing not to forget. And then finally, Arcocephali. Normally you would think, pick Helheim and round out the elves. I like what Hedalas has done here. So, what he has done by adding Arcocephali, depending on what picks they go, is he's given them some really cool, so they've really good magic capabilities, and really good research capabilities. Misties are good researchers. Depending on their scales, I don't think they will have gone Sloth, so the Philosophers probably won't be relevant, but if they did go Sloth, those would have been handy. But they do get a flying Sacred with high defense, and in some ways this imitates the same blesses that elves want. Elves want even more defense and survivability. Wind Riders also rely on their defense skill, just by being mounted instead. So the bless that works for elves is probably also going to work for Wind Riders, and if all else fails, you can expand using chariots instead, but I think he'll probably use the Wind Riders. The Oreads are just excellent mages. The Mage Engineers will allow that team to upgrade all their forts higher than they otherwise would be, which solves any primitive fort problems. Should not be underestimated. And also 30 siege bonus and 30 siege defense bonus. Mage Engineers. Don't rule them out. And if you stack Mage Engineers as research mages, they're not great, but they can make forts very hard to break. So I have deep respect for early Arcocephali as a nation. They're good. And of course, true healers. Arcosavali is just a great utility pick. And the fact that they have scrying within Dominion, where they get accurate military reports inside their Dominion, which they will grant... Oh, actually, no, that's a Dominion ability and they're not the gods. They won't have their scrying, I don't believe, which is disappointing. But there we go. So, engineers, good mages, a flying sacred that relies on the same sort of bless. I don't think they needed a third elf. I think Arcosavali is a great supporting pick, especially since Vanheim really struggles in the efficient research game, and to an extent, like, Tina Nog is okay at it. Alright. Anyway. Oh, sorry. The Banshee is the spy, and the Boban-Shi, or however you say that one. I don't know how to pronounce this one. Which is a shame to part of my heritage. Anyway, they're effective assassins. So this is an A+ pick. This is a good team. There's synergies. They have elves. They have research. They have flying sacreds. They have assassins. They have healers. They're going to drive everyone nuts. They are the pick to watch, I think. Team 4, the Small Giants. Team 4 Small Giants consists of Machaka, being played by Chris Lighthawk, who is a really strong player who appears in the comment section of my videos a lot of the time, so good to have you with us, Chris. Agartha is the god, being played by Ymir, and Beritos being played by Calandiel. So they have picked 3 nations that have size 3 units. So the Lion Warrior for Machaka, who puts everything in middle-aged Machaka to shame so far as cost-effectiveness. He's high prot, he's sacred, he hits super hard with a magic weapon. Like, what more do you want? You don't even need to expand with elephants because you got Lion Warriors, man. And they got decent, if expensive, capital-only mages. But really, the Buddha. The Buddha, the Recruit Anywhere Buddha, who's D2 with random Earth Fire, like early age Machaka, solid pick. Agartha is at... Early age Agartha may be strongest Agartha, maybe. There's an argument to be made for each of Agartha's ages, although LA is probably not as popular. Middle age is these troops are all pretty shitty, but they have Mind Blasters, and they have big, tough, recruitable mages that can serve lots of purposes. They're okay. They're also semi-amphibious. So taking Agartha as a god lets them match... Oh, there's not as much of a requirement here, is there, in terms of like synergies. And then Beritos. Beritos gives them more late game summonable and recruitable thugs. They also have a size 3 sacred. So if you're using a bunch of like size 3s, which is what size 3s and size 4s, which is what Agartha, Machaka and Beritos have, and they all take a bless, they all probably are going to need roughly the same things in order to survive, right? Like, it's not like if you take a giant that wants a regen bless and an elf that wants like defense and another nation that wants repel, like, they're not in that situation. They can throw the same bless on all of them and get good value out of all of them. Especially since Colossi Warriors, with a bless, they'll be okay. They also have War Elephants available for expansion if they need them. And don't underestimate the Bertian Lancers, because they are so cheap. Even if they only have 1 attack, they have lots of defense, but they're probably going to be relying on these Colossi Warriors, who are only a little more expensive and are sacred, and so have reduced upkeep and will get the benefits of their bless. Then they get this little bit of blood as a late game option from Beritos as well, which is a little handy. So reasonable magic access. So they've got Earth, Fire, they've got blood. Do they have death? Yeah, they have death through Agartha. The Oracles of the Dead. Yep, they have death. So they got a lot of paths. This team doesn't jump out to me immediately as being super mega scary, but it's there and it can't be ruled out. Let's go on to another team that is like scary in that it has achieved some clear synergies. So we have Sauromatia, played by General Sinwar, played by Foxy Dean, and Hinnom, played by Galzon. Hinnom being the god. So this is team blood. Is not blood, but you don't need too much blood. So here is the obvious synergy that we have here. Hinnom has excellent blood summons in terms of they can summon like Seirim and Shedim and all those various like vaguely demonic summons, and in super late game they have access to the sort of paths they need to summon the big demon lords, because they've got fire, so they have fire, blood, Cross. The Balim can have Blood Astral Cross. Yeah, and they've obviously got the Fire Blood. So these guys can get Demon Lords. These guys are really quite dangerous if they can get their hands on lots and lots of blood slaves. I mean, the horror story is if they make it all the way to the end and they manage to get the Grigori onto the field. The problem is they don't have very efficient blood hunters. Your choice for blood hunters are you can pay 250 for a Blood 1 Kohen, who is a population killer and causes unrest, or you can get the Bahalim for 450 gold for 2 blood, and maybe a tiny shot at Blood 3, population killer causes unrest, or you can grab the Melkarts, who are very good blood hunters. Melkarts are very good blood hunters. They blood hunt at Blood 6, but they cause unrest 8, they population kill 80, they're capital only sacreds, and they cost 485 gold, and you really want to be using them for something else. This is a problem for scaling and maintaining a blood economy as Hinnom. So I don't think Hinnom's going to be hunting for blood slaves. I think Hinnom is going to call up their good mates in Saromatia, and Saromatia is going to get... Who is it? Who in Saromatia is the... there'll be some blood ones there. No, it's not the Soothsayers. Witch Kings, Sorter, Manflayers. I had thought it was one of these guys, but clearly I am wrong. Am I instinctively wrong about this setup? So what I had thought had happened is that, I guess it's some of the Warrior Sorceresses randoms. Is there really no other, blood hunter, good blood hunter in the Sauer roster? I guess it's going to be Warrior Sorceresses or something else like that with Sanguine Dowsing Rods. I guess it's still a slight improvement. Sorry guys. I just thought Saromatia had on their big recruitable mages, they had access to more blood hunting, but clearly I am wrong. Okay, so what I was going to say is that you can get Saromatia to do the blood hunting for Hinnom without killing population and causing unrest using non-cap only mages, which is true. It's just nowhere near as efficient as I thought it was. Well, there you go. Yeah, okay, so Hinnom can be supplied its blood slaves by Saromatia. Gives them a big sort of nature power. So the real guys here are the Enkidu Shamans, and to an extent the what can you use? You can use Gurus. You can't really use Galas. N2 and NC, but Enkidu Shamans and Enkidu Bone Readers who like death, but Enkidu Shamans are powerful mages. They can random nature 3. I don't really rate Ur's troops, but Hinnom has good troops. Saromatia has very good troops. So they should be able to expand out relatively well. They've got diversity of magic in that they've got astral, blood, fire, death, and Saromatia has some really good communions, efficient micro communions. And Saromatia can also research very effectively, whereas Hinnom tends to struggle a little bit. Has Elegus, so if they're playing, in this case, is a disciple. So what can happen is the disciple is probably a monster of some kind, which is designed to be effective in fights, expansions, or whatever, and they can summon it back really quickly and efficiently if they need it, because they're not relying on the disciple god to hold up the bless. The god of Hinnom will be the one holding up whatever their bless is, if any of it is incarnate, whereas the god can sort of suicide itself and take risks. So I expect to see scales, probably, from these guys, a rapidly researching Saromatia that gets into Skelly spam, while Hinnom pumps out super-combatants and is fed blood slaves, and handles, sight-searching, some research, throws its disciple god around. It'll be interesting to see what we've got from them. And that leaves the final team in this game. Now, I found some like-minded spirits, because I was of two minds of getting to this game. I'm really bloody busy at work. I'm really stressed out, and a game of Dominions, if you're taking it really seriously, can be quite a stressful event. You've seen this in the previous games that I've posted. So what I've done is I found some kindred spirits, and we got together and we're like, okay, let's listen to the comments section on all those videos which are saying, I only play strong nations. And let's 3 of us get together who commit that we're not going to try hard a game. We're going to play a game, we're going to play well, but we're going to take a meme, we're going to run the meme as far as we can, we're going to entertain people, we're going to do something that shouldn't work, and sure, we're not out to win, but we'll set our own goals and objectives and have some fun with it. So, I give you Team Underwater Bastards. We have Atlantis, played by Bolin Stalin, who was Tinanog Eriu in the last game and had the worst spawn in history. We have me, Perun, playing Pelagia, and we have, yes, your eyes do not deceive you. Ignore this, I was just trying to get more gems so I could do tests before I remembered I had debug on and could just wish for gems. Anyway, we have a non-pop kill Theridos. We have Theridos as a disciple, and we, ladies and gentlemen, are Team Underwater Bastards. We intend to angrily exist, being friends to everyone, and peacefully existing in our world, hopefully mostly immune to the conflicts and tribulations of the world outside. Let's talk a little bit about my team, because obviously we are the most important, interesting thing in this game. If for no other reason than whereas I would rate all these other builds like cool, ours is not functional. We do not have a functional team. This is a 100% meme entertainment. We hope to provide some good viewing for you, our dear listeners, and some fun for ourselves before we go back to like try-hardy games. I promise if I come into another Disciples game, I will make a good try-hard build and we'll do some hard strategy. But for now, let us entertain. Atlantis is the legitimate pick of the 3 in the early age. Early age Atlantis is actually okay. They have some decent double attack troops, Deep 1 spears. They have a recruitable thug / super combatant chassis in the form of the Basalt King. Really solid. Earth, water, fire with randoms again, so you can possibly get Phoenix Pyre on land. They can Iron Skin, they can protect themselves. They have inbuilt fear, they're sacred, they're fire resistant, they're dark vision 100. This is a decent thug / super combatant, and 51 hit points at size 5. Nice. And recruitable holy 3s with heaps and heaps and heaps of leadership. Cool. The Sacreds, Living Pillars of the Sacreds. Yeah, they're not great. They're high encumbrance and generally not very good. But, you know, they do have some good troops. They're fully amphibious. They have powerful priests. They have advanced forts. And he is playing the role of our god in this game. So, Atlantis, Born Stolen. If this was our first pick and everyone was like, yeah, fair, legit. Because even if you were doing a land nations, having an Atlantis offside recruiting Basalt Kings might be a really good idea. Then we picked Pelagia. And everyone knew what was up. Early Age Pelagia is not a very good nation. Middle Age Pelagia is much better. They're a murder fest of the oceans. And Late Age Erythea, which is basically Late Age Pelagia. Again, quite a good nation. Lots of good things to say about it. Early Age Pelagia, bit shit, to be honest. So no one can tell me that I picked a super strong nation out the box for this one. Why is Early Age Pelagia a bit shit? Well, first of all, most of their troops are completely aquatic. Hooray. You get, in terms of troops that can go on land, you get the Turtle Warrior. Fear him, for he has a turtle shell shield and mediocre stats and a spear. And everything else is absolutely aquatic. Once you get on land, the best you can do is this thing. The Sideraspist. Or however you pronounce that. Basically a phalangite style troop. Small shield, hoplite helmet, long length 4 iron spear. So for 13 gold, 19 resources, 16 recruitment points, you get a spear attack and protection 15. It's the best you got. That's the elite. You have your sacred infantry aquatic and thus completely bloody irrelevant to this game unless someone decides to come underwater and mess with us. And I'll talk about why I don't expect anyone to want to come underwater and mess with us. And they're good underwater. They're formation fighters, poison barbs, they're sacred, they're good bodyguards, they have decent stats and protection. Like, they're not amazing. They do magic piercing damage, so you can't invulnerability us underwater. Well, you don't need to take a magic weapons bless. The Pearl Guard will do it. But like I said, did I mention they're fully aquatic? Absolutely 100% fully aquatic. Pelagia then has like an okay sort of mage core. Oh, also Pelagia doesn't start with any commanders that can go on land at turn 1. So you got to recruit them before you can go on land at all. Then they have a series of entirely aquatic mages with 2 exceptions, and the 2 exceptions are weak as shit. So you have the Pearl Clan Priest, recruitable, 80 gold, holding 2. It's a pretty good deal. Lizards get a similar deal, only the lizard one walks on land, and this one is purely aquatic, sorry. So, yeah, sucks to be him. You also get a 45 gold, holding 1 who can go on land, and that's your priest that goes on land. Also, your only commander that you can recruit underwater that goes on land, 60 leadership. Wish you had 80. Anyway, this is your mage, one of your mages that can go on water. He costs 95 gold, and he has 1 water and a random air, water, earth, nature. This is not a good mage. This is not a slave mage from Relay. This is not something mega useful. This is shit. But it's what you got. You then have Pearl Mages. Pearl Mages are quite good. They have Pelagia's unique Pearl Cultivator mechanic, which lets them turn 3 water gems into 3 astral pearls with no, like, efficiency loss in between. It's a good thing. They have Water 2, Astral 1, Nature 1, and a random Air, Water, Astral, Nature. And, you know, decent hit points, and they're only 195 gold for 5 paths, and one of them is Astral, which means they're going to be useful in a communion. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it's okay. Problem, again, is it is 100% aquatic. Hooray. So, yeah, that's a problem. So, you're like, okay, well then, surely there's another mage that can go on land. The answer is yes. You can recruit this guy, the Ictiid Pearl Mage. He is an inept researcher, so when you're stockpiling him, you're not getting good research. He is not sacred, he costs 80 gold, and you're like, oh, he's an astral, that's useful. What paths can I connect into my communions? Water. You can connect water into your communions. Good job, Pelagia. You are truly to be feared and loathed by all peoples in the universe. So, yeah, you do get a recruitable, on-land, shitty astral mage, but he's useful for nothing else. So, all you can do is wire up a bunch of Ictiid. If you wanted to use those, you had to wire Ictiid Pearl Mages up to like an Air Random 1 Pelagian Mermage, and there you go. We'll talk about why you don't want to do that at some point. Pearl Kings look awesome. They're not super tough, size 4, 45 hit points, but this is a recruitable demi SC, but it's for underwater use. It's actually really dangerous underwater. Do not fuck with Pearl Kings underwater. Pearl Cultivator 5, they free spawn Hippocampi, which are, again, fully aquatic units that I believe you pay upkeep on. Great. They have some nice resistances. They're holding 3, and they start with Water 4, and they can go all the way up to Water 5 if you're very, very lucky with a random. You probably won't hit Water 5, but like that means they're basically a Water Queen recruitable, which is kind of nuts. So don't mess with these guys underwater for big casting, and they're astral, so they can be boosted by the communions, and they can get just a little bit more nature and whatever. But again, fully aquatic. So you need to put items on them to get them on land. But hey, they're sacred. And recruitment points for. So they look cool, they look scary. Reality, they're not a strong part of the strategy, but there's something. Once you get on land, you can recruit the Shore Commander, who is a slightly armored commander, yay. And you can recruit the Pelagian Explorer, who's one of your best researchers. 75 gold, random, air, earth, astral, nature. So vaguely useful. Good researcher, so 14 research for 75 gold in Magic 3. Solid, but coastal forts only. So, you might think the only reason I would complain about Pelagia is the fact that most of their units can never get on land, and the game is played on land, so they're kind of stuck. Also fathom the fact that all of their land recruits are coastal only. So once you leave the water, also note the Ictiid Pearl Mage is a capital only astral, which is freaking shit. Like you want to be able to recruit your slaves in places other than that. So what you have to rely on is astral random Pelagian explorers, or paying big dollars to get Pearl Mages and then give them equipment. So you might not actually see too many Pearl Kings because you're too busy getting a limited supply of astral slaves out of your capital, which is great. And a bunch of Pelagian explorers. This is not a good mage lineup, and outside of coastal forts, you recruit indies. You don't get your troops, you don't get your mage line, you get nothing. You get independence outside of coastal forts. So why am I playing it? Why am I playing it considering the fact that I did a test with Oceania, who's also famously terrible, and I actually really enjoyed playing Oceania, because Pelagia was worse and it was better for the meme. Pelagia is pretty useless outside of the water, and the way this map works is there are no water nations other than us. The ideal for us would have been 2 other water nations. If some other teams had picked like 1 water nation each, and they'd been in our pond, and we could eat them and have 5 capitals, we'd be set. But everyone saw what we were doing, didn't pick water nations. So we had to decide after our second pick, well, no one's going to take the bait and come underwater with us. Do we continue with the meme, or do we try and save our nations by picking something somewhat viable? And of course, we chose to go with the meme. What is worse than Pelagia? Non-pop kill Theranos. So, when Theranos is playing as a disciple in a disciples game, it does not get its free spawn ghosts. It still starts with half population size in its capital, but it does not have pop kill and it does not get free spawn ghosts. In other words, Theranos does not get all of its ghostly chaff that are the absolute best strength of the nation. Why is this particularly complicated? Because if you look at Theranos, you'll notice that it has no underwater recruits except for its sacred. Just think about that for a moment. So yeah, Theranos gets 1 recruitable underwater troop. That underwater troop is capital only. It's sacred, so it's limited by holy points. It's a poor amphibian, so it gets reduced stats underwater, and it's a bad formation fighter. This is a 28 gold and underwater average statistic infantry unit. It's worse than some independents, but it's what they've got. They're 2 to a square, or are they 1 to a square? Actually, I'm not sure. I think they're still 2 to a square. I'm not sure. Anyway, 2 to a square. Not great stats. Expensive. Capital only unit. Theranos can't recruit anything in any other underwater fort. Their mages can only be recruited in capital, can also be recruited in coastal forts. So I think they can recruit Melia in underwater forts. Anyway, so underwater in their capital, Theranos gets access to 1 unit and 2 capital-only mages, and they can recruit Melia. If Theranos gets on land, they can actually recruit like baby Archocephali units. So you have Therodian hoplites, who are non-formation fighter hoplites, but you know, they're okay. They can recruit Koribants, who are mini Kurites that are weaker but cheaper, and it's still a sacred. And they can recruit basically helots that aren't slaves, thus are inferior. So this is the Therodian Peltast is a independent light infantryman. They've only got 5 protection because they wear leather and have a wicker shield, and they have a couple of javelins with 2 ammunition. So really, the land troop here is the Therodian hoplite. And the Therodian hoplite is one of the better infantry units that our team has. In their capital, they get decent mages, the Hecateride and the Dactyl. The Dactyl is a master smith with a wide path access, including a little spattering of death. So this is good path access. They've got a big nature mage, so the Hecaterides give our team big nature. Holy 2s, so potentially nature 4. You can technically roll nature 5, but we can reliably get N4. So this is a good mage. They have a bunch of things, recuperation, like their Hecaterides are good, they're just capital only. And then on coastal forts, because again, like Pelagia and to an extent Atlantis, Theranos can only do its recruitment in coastal forts. They get the Carbiros, who is their research mage, a sacred, so relatively cost effective, I guess. 125 gold, research 9 with 1 earth, and then 1 of earth, water, air, fire. They get a forge bonus, so they get the 1 gem discount, so he'll be doing a lot of our forging. They get a resource bonus, which will help you produce hoplites. But they create cause unrest 1, which is crap. because you want to pile Carboroi up. So instead, you might end up using Melias in a lot of cases, just because they're not causing unrest, and while they're more expensive, they're still sacred. I think we'll still be using Carboroi, but this cause unrest one is unfortunate. So Therados is shit in this setting. Its strength is really normally its ghosts. So why do we pick it? Well, we picked it for two reasons. We picked it because we wanted to show ourselves and others that we were committing to the meme. Therados is not, it's not even like Relay, where you have the ability to go on land you're just not good at. Therados is, we are memeing hard. Therados is a coastal nation, like Pelagia, like Atlantis, unlike nations like Relay, which have a little more inland recruiting capability. They also give us a few other things. I didn't mean to click out of Therados entirely. So there's some good mages, there's some good forging, there's elemental access. There's some good things here, but there aren't many of them. But we're committing to the idea. However, Therados can get Telkeens, who are really good underwater and capable on land, and are extremely viable super combatant chassis, and we have 3 nations worth of water gems to feed them. They are adept forgers, which means they can manufacture items for trade and sale, and also for supplying the basalt kings. They can mass produce a waterpath Carboroi with a hammer can produce Shambler skins for 2 water gems, which will help me get mages on water. And who wants to assault Therados underwater? You just don't want to do it. So what we have are 3 nations, 2 of which are entirely... It's sliding scales, okay? Atlantis, which can make good use of water forts and coastal areas, which is, cool, and has advanced forts. Nice. Pelagia, which can make use of water forts and coastal forts to a limited extent. And Therados, which can't make use of water forts other than its capital, but can make use of coastal fortifications. Okay, so then we were like, alright, so we've built the meme. How then do we play this meme out to be a valuable addition to this game rather than just cancer? And make no mistake, we'll be cancer if we have to, but we were like, let's find something valuable to commit to in this game. So, what were we worried about and what do we want to achieve? Well, what we want to achieve is we want to be the friendly underwater nations, in that we want to, as far as most people are concerned, we want to be friendly, supportive underwater neighbours. We just want to spread our nice scales everywhere. Ignore these are not our actual scales. We want to spread those across the world, share the love. We want to establish nice little coastal enclaves and prosper, and then intervene, I guess, to support friends and against enemies. But we're not really playing to be the number one, right? We're playing to be a support actor and make a valuable contribution to the game and gain some experience with a very unconventional selection of nations and a very unconventional setting. However, we still want to survive and do reasonably well. So there's a couple of strategic imperatives. Our first great concern is that there are a number of nations in this game which are amphibious. I'm looking primarily at the Fomorians and to a limited extent at the Agarthans, and also the nations which have super combatant bases can send their guys underwater. So we were like, okay, how do we make sure that people don't go, we're bloody annoyed with these underwater, tossers just sitting there and, pretending no one can get them. We're going to go underwater with like some repel thugs, or we're going to go underwater with some super combatants and take everything that isn't a fort, because even those nations will struggle to take the forts, except for maybe if the Agarthans could clear us with super combatants, they might get some wet ones onto our forts. So, we have taken, as our gods, some badass aquatic... we haven't sent them to the server yet, but we have designed some badass aquatic super combatant disciples and a badass super combatant capable god, which are designed to basically be able to take on anything in the game that anyone on land might send underwater. In other words, we are confident that unless we are dead by like turn, 6? I think it's turn 6. Anyway, if we're not dead by then we should be immune to being like killed by anyone who's on land. Even if all the amphibious nations in the game decide to gear up a bunch of thugs and come underwater, we can take it, we can handle it. And that's before we even get into the water elemental summoning, which, if you look at how we fight underwater, for example, if you look at Pelagia, like, Pelagia can do some bloody water elementals, right? Like, they can get some water 3s out. They've got recruitable water 4s. Like, they've got decent underwater troops. All of us have decent underwater troops except for Therados. We all have something that we can do in order to be, like, really prickly and defensive underwater. And then it's a case of picking what we need to do in order to maintain relevance. And there's two things that are important to remember here. The first is that the average province allocation is bigger than just the water. So we need, and all of us have very important, significant coastal recruits. So all of us need coastal enclaves. So what will inevitably happen is we will approach our neighbours when we go on land, which we are capable of doing in reasonable quantities, and be like, look, this is not a big land claim, but this is what we've got, and we're going to do it, and we're going to recruit here. Are we cool? And we're hoping that most of our neighbours will say yes, and to those will be like, great, well, Therados' forging services are open, and we're available to help you out if you're ever attacked. Like, genuinely be like good guy underwater friends. And then the one person that says, nah man, get fucked, go back into the water, we're like, okay, we're going to be a thorn in their side for the rest of the game. We will raid, pressure, and whatever, and whenever they get into a war, we'll just be a pain in the neck. So the trick is we all need a little bit of a coastal enclave. Particularly, a lot of us will have cap ring provinces that are land. We'll need them. Even when they're relatively close to other people, securing them will be important because none of our nations, particularly Therados, can survive without a land presence. So we're willing to fight for that. The other thing is this land bridge. We need it. So our team is separated. Unlike every other team, which gets an internal space they then get to fill in, the water nations are cut into two lakes. There's the small lake. This is the hardest start position. It's not set who will begin in the small lake. Whoever starts in the small lake has a difficult time of it. The only way to link our nations up is by this land bridge here. And it might be close to other nations, but we're going to need to secure this land bridge. Failure to secure this land bridge will be cause for eternal war, bane venom charms, tilting, coast raiding, kamikazes, donations, like whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, we need to link our two lakes together. And will that always be a vulnerable, like, carotid artery for our empire? Yes, but we need it because otherwise we cannot shuffle meaningfully between the two lakes, which we need to do if we're going to be efficient about this. So coastal enclaves and this land bridge are probably the two non-negotiable things we absolutely need. But from that point on, we're going to be friendly underwater neighbors. We're going to trade with people, support people. We're going to try and support people who are, nice and friendly. We're going to keep a very close eye out for people running away with the game, and we're going to try and check our egos and our expectations and be like, well, look, we may not be the ones leading this thing, but if someone else is running away with it, the water nations will emerge from their lake in all their glorious mediocrity and make some contribution to the fate of this world. So yeah, I'll do an actual nation analysis on Pelagia at some point. I could do a nation analysis on scale no free spawn Therados, but yeah, there we go. But no, a strategy, maximum friendship, monitor the super dangerous land powers, take the enclaves that we are reasonably entitled to as far as map gen is concerned. So about 5 provinces is the minimum, I think, to be average and relevant on land, especially since I found in testing the water provinces tend to be shit by comparison to the land provinces. So we do need a land presence. It can't be enough just to sit in the lake, but hopefully, because let's be realistic here, we're not going to win. We can't win. There will not be... I put heaps of thrones in this map and only 2 are in the water. We can't project force realistically away from the coastlines, which means that about a quarter of the map is useful to us in any way, shape or form. So we're not going to win. But we can learn, we can negotiate, we can contribute, we can help shape who does win the game, and we can learn a little bit about how to use nations that are much more handicapping than the ones you've seen me play to date. Pelagia is a much much bigger challenge. This is a much more limited and controlled roster, particularly in a game where there are no hostile water nations. Pelagia would love another water nation to kill. Not as much as Middle Age, where it's the underwater murder machine, but still it relies on having another underwater nation to kill, and we don't have one. But I think it'll be entertaining. I think it'll be a very different experience. Yeah, I think it'll be a different experience. I think it'll test limits of diplomacy. I think it'll be a very social game because it's team based, and because alliances will shift in blocks rather than as individuals. I think it'll be really fun. There'll be some serious cancer. There'll be some mega blessers out there. You're going to have some horrific combos going on. Three nations working together are more powerful than the sum of their parts, and that's what I like about the idea of a Disciples game, except for where those three nations are Atlantis, Pelagia, and Therados in the early age. So if you have any other questions about our madness and our memes and our intentions, or any of that, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll put the nation guide up in a couple of days, but it'll still probably be a fortnight or two until you get to see the first turns for Team Underwater Bastards and our attempt at, if not glory, at least like to exceed mediocrity in this amazing game hosted by GC. Cheers.